Hello again. Another in the series on the history, design, and collecting of knives. And in a couple of the previous reviews, I have debunked some of the myths about the development and the provenance of some knives, particularly things like some of the Shanghai knives, some of the variations of the Fairbairn, some of the clandestine weapons, and so on. And, I maybe thought, well, who am I to make these claims? Well, it's not my opinion. I'm not an expert by any means, but it's based on the opinion of people who are experts. And one such expert is Robert Wilkinson Latham, and he's written Wilkinsons and the FS fighting knife. Now, Robert is the grandson of Jack Wilkinson Latham, who was the manager of Wilkinson Sword and who was at the meeting with Fairbairn and Sykes when the FS was designed. And he has access to all the records, including some that really only came to light after 2005, about the production, the manufacture, and the lineage of the FS knife. And in this book, he does debunk a lot of the myths. So really what I have been doing is quoting people like him, and also another book which we will be reviewing, which also debunks a lot of the nonsense that's around. And one of the first things he talks about is the thing about the bayonets. Now, a lot of the information on the Shanghai knife, the original knife that was presented to Fairbairn by Sam Yeaton, a few sources have said it was made from Lee Metford bayonets, sometimes from the tops of Lee Metford bayonets. And there's Robert Wilkinson Latham cast a lot of doubt on this. He said that there's no way you can take that particular bayonet and make a knife that looks like the Shanghai knife out of it. It just doesn't happen. Then it's been quoted that the FS knife was also made from surplus bayonets that either Wilkinson had on hand, or that were kind of surplus in War Office stocks, old bayonets. And he categorically refutes this. He said, that's not how we made knives. He said, and he presents the argument for this. So it's a very authoritative dismissal of that particular theory. Coming on to the meeting, the famous meeting in Pall Mall, the origin of the knife, some sketches were produced by Wilkinsons to kind of see what kind of shape the knife was, and the sketches are reproduced here. So that is documentary evidence as to the design of the original FS. And again, this idea that Fairbairn had his Shanghai knife with him, this is not mentioned at all, and it's highly unlikely because they were referring to these sketches and also the famous demonstration with the ruler, which I've mentioned before. So that's just another little thing on that. The book then goes into the first pattern in great detail, how it was made, all the details of it, who was at the meeting, and so on. And it tells you all you'd ever need to know. So there's a lot about that. Then the other patterns second baton, third baton, and so on. All the wartime stuff, all the different variations, the ribbed handles and beads, and all the different things. It's all discussed here. Also goes into the post-war models, which is very interesting. And one of the things about the post-war is that they were still issuing the Fairbairn to people like the Royal Marines and to the SAS. Now, a former RSM of 22 SAS has said that they didn't have a fighting knife, wasn't an issue weapon. And, you know, who am I to argue with that? But the fact of the matter is, I had one that was from the SAS stores. It was given to me. It was from after the Falklands, a couple of years after the Falklands. They had them in the stores, and I was given a brand new. It was still in the packaging, and it was just like the black third pattern you can buy anywhere, except it had the MOD markings on it. And I eventually gave it to Marcus, and he still got it. And there is a photo of him in my garden with this knife. So the knife existed. It came from 22. The guy who gave it to me had said many, many years. He just left, in fact. And so there you have it. They were issued. Now, whether it was used, I've never heard of any accounts of it being used, particularly in the Falklands or whatever, but they were available. Another little interesting snippet in it is about the crotch knife, or they sometimes called the lapel dagger or the thumb knife. And again, it was made at Aston House, and it wasn't made by Wilkinson. And Robert Wilkinson Latham is quite firm on this. And this is interesting because there are examples out there with the Wilkinson logo transfer on them. And he accounts for this by saying that at one time the company was very lax in the control of these transfers. And if you ask for one, for a sample, for whatever reason, they send it to you. You can then put it on to anything. And this is why you get fake lapel daggers and thumb knives marked with Wilkinson. So if you've got a thumb dagger and it's got the Wilkinson transfer on it, it's probably fake. And of course, they apply that as a measure of authenticity, and in fact, it's the opposite. Then there's quite a decent chapter on silent killing training. Quite a long chapter too, how it was done. Lots of great photos, and very good throw there, so on. And Fairbairn in the United States. So the last part of the book really is myths, bunkum and balderdash. And again, this is the authority for me, decrying some of the other published material. I'm not going to go through it all because, buy the book. But one of the myths was that Fairbairn, excuse me, when they had that initial meeting in Pall Mall, that he guaranteed with his own funds the purchase of 300 of the knives, the first 300, in order to have them manufactured. Total balderdash. Didn't happen. They wouldn't have done that, Wilkinson, and it was all done through Station 12. And the orders are there. They're in writing. They still exist. So whether that little snippet came from Fairbairn himself or whether someone else has made it up, I don't know, but it's not true. So really significant book, a lot of very original source material in there. And what this book does is put into context a lot of the other stuff that's out there. Robert Wilkinson Latham has written quite a few articles online as well, which are always worth reading. I think he's updated the book. I seem to remember there was a thing about a new edition, but I just had a look, and Amazon certainly not offering the second edition. So this is the one to get.